Call the meeting to order. Agenda approval.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of minutes, July 16th,
Or do we need to do
2024.
pledge allegiance?
You're not required to, but you can.
Okay.
Okay, we can do that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Okay, approval of minutes, July 16th, 2000.
No, we're just behind in minutes because we hired new employees and we're trying to train and do all this stuff.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have 2 more months to catch up yet.
We'll bring the rest of 2024 in December. Yes.
Toward the end of the year, right?
Yes, we are. I requested it. Yeah.
Okay, item number 3, TX 2411.01 brewery and similar definitions.
Okay, yeah.
Staff request, right, staff,
Oh, I can move forward. Or you want to read it? You want me to read?
good.
Okay.
Staff requests a text amendment in the Stallings Development Ordinance within Article 3 to clarify and expand the existing language. And also B, the statement of consistency and reasonable. Mr. Max.
So this is TX 2411.01. It's a brewery and similar definitions. So we do have a brewery coming to town, wanting to locate in town. So we were looking at the definitions and trying to see what was most similar, and there was only brew pub in the ordinance. So I looked at a bunch of different types of alcohol establishments that we don't really, and food truck we also didn't have. Since they all are like selling a product, I thought it's okay to bring all of these in as one text amendment. So I did a little bit of research between Matthews and Indian Trail and kind of combined both of those definitions and incorporated a little bit of Stallings in there. The biggest changes are the first two, the brewery. So I'm sure everybody knows what a brewery is, but I limited the distribution of the brewery to 75% because I really want a retail component of a brewery. And online, the articles were saying that 75% is the average distribution percentage of a brewery. So I wanted to limit that because breweries are allowed in zoning districts like town center and mixed use, and distribution is not. Distribution is allowed in industrial, so I really wanted to differentiate alcohol distribution versus a brewery. And that's what the definition helps me with. Additionally, it allows additional features like restaurants, food trucks. I almost said fast food trucks. Event spaces and playgrounds and similar things like that. Additionally, I just expanded on brew pub because I combined Matthews and Indian Trail. They had a little bit of a different definition than what we had, and I wanted brew pub to be more so a place where people consumed alcohol instead of a distribution facility, a little bit more than a brewery. So I made that a definition change.
So Max, is the 75% inclusive of on-site sales or exclusive of on-site sales?
Exclusive of
So that's
on-site
just
sales.
outside distribution
Yeah.
then? Okay.
Yeah.
How is that accounted for? Like, does that put a burden on staff to review that, or?
So I think at the time of submittal, they'll have to prove, submit documentation to us on what their plans are for that. But we wouldn't, I guess, unless someone whistleblowed, I'm trying to think, like told us otherwise, then we wouldn't research it afterwards. It's kind of like code enforcement, how if we see a violation, we'll go and try to rectify it, but if we don't see it, we're not actively going out of our way to find it. Distillery, food truck, and mobile vendor, kind of very similar definitions to what Matthews and Indian Trail have. I just wanted to differentiate between like food truck and mobile vendor, because food trucks are for food and mobile vendors are, let's say you have retail. I have people wanting to have food truck or vehicles in town and sell like apparel at an event. So that would be a mobile vendor. And then winery as well as another alcohol establishment that's missing in town. I don't foresee a winery coming to town, but it is one of the missing types.
Kind of like
That-
what,
Go ahead.
kind of like what downtown Matthews says at Seaboard.
Yeah.
That's a winery and snack place.
Okay.
Distillery on 51.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we had those definitions in place so that if these businesses did come, we have a direction that they could go into.
Max, in the interest of being consistent, would the 75% distribution, should that be also added to the winery definition? Or if the goal is to have local interaction rather than just
Yeah.
outside sale or
I think that would be acceptable. I think the reason I just added it to brewery is because they're allowed in like town center zoning. And I think a winery, the way it is written in, is that it's separate from a brewery. I picture a winery as like a vineyard, but I didn't add vineyard to it because I really didn't think that we needed vineyard.
Is there a brewery coming, location spotted already that they want to do?
There is a future brewery looking into our, the old tractor trailer building, old John Deere building, excuse me, right next door to us. Yeah, so in our directors meeting, we call it like the Economic Catalyst Building, and I cannot remember the address right at the top of my head. I don't like saying it out loud too, so for some reason, I don't know why.
so will they have a meeting room that would be accessible to the
They might.
At least lunch for the.
But this would allow that brewery to locate there. Additionally, would let them have restaurants and food trucks associated with that and other things that breweries have.
I agree with, John, your question about the 75%. Like, should the same definition that goes underneath brewery and brew pub in terms of on-site commerce be there for distillery and winery?
Do that?
Kind of what you were getting at.
Yeah, I'll make sure that change shows up at council. So with that recommendation, just make that in the recommendation. Say I recommend approval and adding 75% to the other.
Saying that 75% is distribution, 25% consumption on site.
And you can change that number if you want. I know that our lawyers are looking into making sure 75% isn't too low. But I saw that was the average.
Any other questions?
Were there any other things that, as you looked at Matthews and Indian Trails definitions, that you saw that were not applicable for Stallings?
Not for these definitions, no. I kind of just combined them and made our own, but they're super similar. They're very similar to what Matthews and Indian Trail also has. I think the only thing that's different is probably brewery and brew pub. That's the big differences. Just because of that 75% and 40% production that I added. But we could add it to the distillery and winery as well.
I know Matthew says that distillery on Monroe Road there. It has
The Oak Lord, yeah.
Have you guys been there? Haven't been
Whiskey
there.
Garden, I should say.
It's like a membership kind of thing. It's not just a
okay.
walk-in.
I do
But is
drive
it the
by
type
it.
of thing where you
Oh,
have
it
to pay
is.
like the
You can walk
$1
in.
membership?
Yeah, yeah, it's,
No, that's a walk-in on Monroe Road there.
I think I think staff, I would want a business like that to locate in our town center. I would try to get something like
Yeah,
that.
they have like a whiskey garden in the back.
Nice.
yeah, they do sell that.
I need to check it out. Staff field trip. Just kidding.
There you go, lunch. They have a food truck.
I'll take you.
Okay.
I better go supervise.
Yeah. Come on.
Not really.
I did actually have the opportunity, my wife and I were up at Eddie's Place up on Sharon Road. guy there named Chase knows the owner. He gave him a bottle of their rye whiskey to test out. Lunch counter, like, okay. It's actually, I'm not a big rye fan, but it's more of a bourbon, but it was actually pretty good, and it had a little sweet texture.
Bourbon is very good.
So it was pretty good stuff, actually.
I make a motion that we approve the request with the amendments that we mentioned involving the consistency of the distribution percentage for, across the different categories.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Statement of consistency,
Oh, okay.
reasonableness.
And I also move that we agree that this is the request is consistent and reasonable as presented.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also try to condense all the language on that statement, if you noticed. Yeah.
Item 4, PX 24.11.02, local government exemptions. Staff requests a text amendment in the Stallings Development Ordinance to exempt properties owned by local governments from Articles 15 and 21, plus statement of consistency.
Down there, okay. So this is TX 241102, the local government exemptions. So Article 15 is special events and temporary structures that kind of dictates events like yard sales, food trucks, yeah, Oktoberfest, like even larger events. Article 21 has open space, so most new properties are required to put 10% open space, 5% improved. It also outlines things like the Greenway Master Plan and the Streetscape Plan. So staff's requesting local government-owned properties to be alleviated from these articles based on, so Article 15, we already have events in town. It's like kind of like a gray area where we don't really enforce, planning doesn't enforce Parks and Recs events. But with this exemption, it kind of leaves less gray area, saying, okay, local governments are exempt from these events. And then Article 21, being exempt from that for local government, if let's say we're trying to develop a property that has a greenway or streetscape, it kind of allows us to, not implement it at the time, but save up money or kind of create a longer way for the town to accumulate that money, instead of being required to pay it up front like a developer would be, because the town doesn't have as much money as like a developer usually. So I wrote 2 text amendments. It's very simple. I just reorganized the first paragraph in each of those articles, and I put the exemption. Properties owned by local governments are exempt from this article. And questions?
What was the origin of this? I know the other one was a potential business moving into the property next door, but what brought this to the table?
So same thing as the property next door. So these text amendments kind of really did start with that building wanting to become a brewery. The town's still going to own it. We're doing a contract right now, so the brewery still hasn't signed anything, but we're trying to, the council's 2024 priority was to identify that space for a brewery. So we're trying to move forward. And these text amendments help that project also move forward. So for example, if that property is owned by us, it's exempt from having events requirements. So they wouldn't have to apply for an event permit, food truck permit. So food trucks only allowed 5 times per calendar year on a property, technically, in our ordinance. So it's exempt them from that, so they could have a food truck there every day. And then Article 21 being exempt for that property, the town, they want to expand that building, and anything over 1,000 square feet requires you to come into compliance with the ordinance. So they would have to do $1 million worth of, we would have to do $1 million worth of streetscape improvements, or the brewery would. And this is a lot of money up front. So we understand that local governments probably don't have $1 million to drop on a streetscape. Additionally, it kind of gives us some time to think about how we're going to implement that streetscape, how we're going to get that money in time, because I think this brewery's happening way sooner than probably trying to accumulate $1 million for the streetscape and planning of that. Where as a developer, if they were going to redevelop that entire site, we would just make them plan that through the site development process up front, which is it's a totally different type of animal. So that's the origin.
Let me propose like a hypothetical situation. Let's say I own a similar piece of property, and the same tenant is debating which one of those to rent. Does this not put the town property in a competitive advantage over a privately held property?
I would say it could be argued, yeah, but I don't think the town would not want to at least have their plans that they adopted come into fruition. So, for example, we have a Greenway master plan. We're starting that Greenway Trail network. We just didn't have the immediate funds, where we're trying to apply for grants, where like maybe a private developer wouldn't be able to get. So we would still always try to strive to meet those adopted plans. Where a developer, if it's built, they wouldn't try to continue.
I can understand with like, events like on publicly owned and publicly operated space, but it seems to me that it may be too broad for like publicly owned but privately operated establishments.
You can definitely share that concern with council, or if there's any amendment that you think that might help. I think this is just the fastest way to kind of achieve the goals of the town.
Otherwise,
Might kill the
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Is it possible to limit the time frame of the amendment to say, within the scope of X date to Y date, this town-owned properties are exempt from XYZ?
I actually I don't know. I don't have anything in the ordinance that has a time frame, other than like you have 2 years of, since its approval for vesting. There's no like stop date to these. That I'd have to ask our attorney to see if we can.
Yeah, I don't know what the straight and narrow of that is, but it does allow then you to say, okay, we understand that there's a project on the line here and we want to get this done, but then it doesn't potentially harm anybody in the future.
that's the only property we own.
As far as I'm aware, yeah.
Property we own.
Yeah, we own the 2 buildings next door as well, those 2 houses. We own the small lot across the street.
The lot, but that's not
So, yeah,
We
so I
need
would
that
say I'm not,
lot.
so for your question, I need to ask the attorney, I don't know. And then for that, I've actually talked to the council maybe a year or 2 ago. I think Heather was on the board, the council then, when I was asking them if they want to invest into streetscape. And at the time, the council voted against investing in the streetscape at that time, which was going to be a lot of money. I can't remember the price, but I was requesting them to install the streetscape in front of town hall. But we were going through like budget as well at the same time.
It's like right in the middle of budget season.
I feel like we're always in budget season. We just started again
You're
for
always.
2025. Yeah. Yeah.
John? Oh, go ahead.
Well, streetscape on this road. What are your expectations of that?
Well, I have high
asking.
expectations just because of, I worked on the plan, and council had, directed Alex at the time to invest in the streets, or look into creating a downtown. And so I went with a consultant and created a streetscape plan. So I put a lot of work into it. So I would hope high, but we don't have any interested in developers at this time, especially on this side, because that's Crooked Creek watershed. There's no expansion for sewer capacity as far as I'm aware on this side. So it really does kill a lot of opportunity after developers talk to the county in this area. So there's nothing in the works right now.
Does our funding, outside funding, come from
What
Funding.
we
outside
trying to
funding?
generate some funding for like a streetscape improvement?
Property taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes
Our
from your
property-
taxes, yeah. Unless we get a grant or
Well,
we
that's what
get
I'm
a
thinking,
bond.
like grants or something like that, I
It's
mean.
just our property tax.
Yeah. So, yeah, we just raised it 3 cents, I think. And then the council, we're already, I don't wanna speak for the budget, cause I'm not fully in it, but I think we're also gonna struggle this year with trying to meet our services. So council's also gonna have to make some decisions next budget season, so.
That was a rough time, like you were like, spent a lot of time getting these great ideas, and then COVID hit, and everybody
Yeah.
needed a
And we
salary
do.
Wow.
increase, and then they
We do
needed
have
new
to pay them.
cars, so it's like,
You
it's
know,
not that we didn't want it, it's just that,
we had priorities.
We need
and I think
employees.
Police department
Of course.
was a good priority.
you know,
You have to maintain what you have before you can go ahead.
Yeah, and you've got Monroe Road, and it's gonna be torn up.
Agree?
At least 2 to
You
3,
know,
I
at
think,
least
yeah.
two. I mean, it's already torn up, so.
Hasn't even started, really, yeah.
Streetscape isn't really good. I know, and streetscape here is the least of our worries, cause that is a mess.
Because also, if we install the streetscape at the frontage of that unnamed road, it is gonna have amendments with that widening as well, cause it's gonna be a loop where people turn left on.
Is there a way, like if, say that we, this sounds so, you know, when you're talking about, transparency, giving them an incentive. We're the ones who have to pay for it. I'm asking is there a way?
So we own the property, we could do it. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, I would say, planning board can even suggest text amendments. So you could say, you could recommend bringing this back in a year or two, or you could recommend council, invest in the streetscape. So, but we couldn't, I don't think I could put it in the
you don't have to
language,
put a timeline.
but I could have a planning board led timeline, if that makes sense. I just could, I don't know about the timeline in the ordinance, where, like, the ordinance itself expires in that timeframe. I'd have to find more, do more research on it, yeah.
I think like the optics of anything like this are sticky because it looks like rules for thee, but not,
Yeah,
not for me. That I would think, as long as it's applying to properties that are used by the town, I see it, but
The town only owns 10 parcels as
Yeah.
well in the whole town.
it seems like
Yeah.
when you're applying it to the potential to lease that to a private entity, you're now competing against private property owners within the town.
Are there any other instances in which the town is exempt from any of its statutes?
Yeah, so we're exempt from a lot of different things like permitting requirements. We're exempt from, I'd have to actually read the beginning of every chapter, but we are exempt from a lot of the ordinance requirements. Like signage, we're also exempt from. Sorry, I didn't have,
What do you mean signage specifically? What is that?
all signs. We're exempt from
The size
signs.
of signs, like that go on the.
Like little,
on the
like
building.
Quantity and.
quantity and size and content. Well, content is, we can't regulate that at all, but, for example, we could put signs, a million signs in the town if we wanted to. But only people can actually really put it on, like, right-of-ways or one per property, technically. We have code enforcement every Monday, well, every day usually, pick up dozens of signs and put in the back of his truck.
So again, is that for any town-owned property is exempt from that? So this.
No, the town is exempt from,
Right, so I'm saying, but just kind of applying it to this current situation with the brewery, would they could have carte blanche on whatever they want to do sign-wise because it's a town-owned property and the town's exempt from the sign ordinance?
technically, but we still own the property.
I know that, but
Part of the lease agreement.
how
probably.
much
Yeah.
pinpoint control are you gonna have over the?
I think it's up to council
Yeah.
with the lease.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll definitely make recommendations to make sure the rest of the ordinance is complied with. And then they've already asked me to look at their expansion plans. Yeah,
are there any other current town-owned properties that are leased by a private?
they're not currently, no. But I think the council was there was a DFI study, and I think council did show a little bit of interest in entering into a public-private partnership to develop their properties, but we just didn't move forward with that. Remember the DFI study? Yeah.
I suppose another question to think about what this is too is, yes, it does open the door for a preferential treatment versus a private citizen or business. But is there a space in town with this amount of square footage that is also zoned to be the same that would be disadvantaged by this property?
There is stuff that's old, but it's already occupied and will be occupied.
What's happening to the corner at Potter and Pleasant Plains?
That's,
They're just widening.
Where the
they're
gas station
adding-
stuff is that's all gonna stay?
Widening. Yeah, they're adding
All
curb and
gonna
gutter and widening the road to encompass
But they're
more
not, but the
turn lanes.
businesses aren't getting moved.
Not as far as I'm aware, but they are being affected by the widening, but not being moved.
The Harris Teeter Shopping
market
Center.
isn't going anywhere.
An existing building wouldn't have to make those amendments. It's only when you trigger major site plan review and you're trying to do over 1,000 square foot of additions. So like, let's say they didn't do anything to the building and they just located inside, they wouldn't have to do the streetscape.
Getting along, right? We go
And
like
all our
this, yeah.
land is almost gone.
Yeah.
You know, available. Have to redevelop buildings.
I didn't talk to Matthews Indian Trail. I'm not,
Different, they're bigger and they're,
because we usually use like Nightdale near Raleigh to compare to us, but they also are different as well. You know, you know what I'm saying? Because they're similar in population and size, but around us, we do like to use Matthews Indian Trail as our guidance, but I
Anything
didn't
that's
ask them.
unincorporated, we can annex.
There's not a lot left to annex. We have to go north. But
Got what
this-
we got.
Yeah, but also the town probably is not looking at this time to buy more properties either. It really just affects that one property at this time.
I think it was just a one-time deal. Like,
Yeah.
they're not in the business of,
and
well,
in
and
a
they,
way.
they
I
really
mean, it's
wanted
just
to
unused.
have a town center start it was to get
have
control
yeah.
over this corner.
This kind of gives us additional control.
Any other questions?
do have one, and not in particular relation to that issue, but why is a food truck only allowed 5 times a year?
I actually don't remember what went into it at the time of adoption, and when we adopted the ordinance in 2018, but it hasn't been amended since, and I think it's time to update that. I just didn't have, I didn't want to write an entire food truck ordinance. I looked at Matthews Indian Trail, they have like multiple pages dedicated to food trucks, and we didn't have that. And I at this time did not want to write a entire new ordinance for food trucks. I just thought that this was the easiest, simplest way to kind of create control over town-owned properties for that. Because we don't really, it's kind of like a gray area where we don't regulate it as much.
Not as many places for food trucks.
Yeah, there's not really, we don't have a downtown yet.
Wait, is the Harris Teeter Shopping Center on Chestnut and Potter, is that ours or Indian Trail?
That
On
is-
which one?
Wesley Chuck?
That's Indian Trail.
That's Indian Trail.
The one this way
The
is Indian
Sta-
Trail.
The Walgreens is Stallings.
It's Stallings, yeah.
That corner
But
side,
the
that
Harris
corner, that
Teeter
one
is
corner
Indian
is.
Trail.
it's
And the
the
gas
side, okay.
stations in Indian Trail as
Yeah,
well.
and the gas, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's weird.
That's one of the areas where we're split in half by Indian Trail, yeah.
Any other questions?
Sorry, Bob.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. That, that we pass.
So this is just I'll put it up on the, local government exemptions for Article 15 and
Government
12,
exemptions.
21.
Yeah, and I would like to, I recommend that, find it, I believe that and also that the planning board recommends.
Vote on the motion first and then do that second motion?
You can do it together.
All right, do it together.
But you don't have to. It's just up to you.
All in favor
Aye.
of the motion?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Passes.
opposed?
All opposed? Okay, so motion passes. So I will bring it back in a year to kind of look into, see if we can. But I think I honestly might bring it back in a year because I'm wanting to rewrite the whole ordinance.
Tony.
Negatively affecting
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah. We're a
Voted,
staff.
right?
I did vote.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I didn't see
Yeah,
her.
I'm saying
I didn't see her
if
hand.
it's negatively affecting
I mean, I
other
just-
businesses.
If you'd like, we can kind of adjourn and
Do we hear a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?